Okay, so we're looking at comparing and ordering numbers with our real numbers that we discussed earlier last week. So you can compare real numbers by expressing them, in the same form. You should express each number as a decimal. In some cases, you may need to approximate the value of a number as a decimal. A number line is a useful reference to compare and order numbers. So remember that ascending means least to greatest, and descending is greatest to least. So ascending, small to big, small numbers to big numbers, descending, big to small. If you can remember D in descending, think of going down. If you can remember that one, then you'll remember that ascending is the other one. So and when we're comparing some of these, they're not just going to give you the straight numbers. They're going to give you some funky numbers, and that's why it's important for us to turn them all into decimals. One of those things that you're going to have to turn into a decimal are square roots, and the square root button in your calculator is that blue second, and then x squared. So let's look at the bottom here. So fill in the circle with less than, greater than, or equal to make a true statement. So the square root of 12 is what compared to 3.6. So in our calculator, we can type in the square root of 12, and we get 3.46. So 3.46 compared to 3.6. The 3's are the same, so we have to go to the next digit over, and our 4 is smaller. So that means 3.6 is greater than 3.46. Example 2, order the set of numbers from least to greatest. Verify your answer by graphing the numbers on a number line. So express each number as a decimal. That's always your step 1. Then order the decimal. So -7, we're already there. The negative square root of 50 is -7. And in your calculator, if you don't have that float button on, then it's going to give you like 10 numbers behind the decimal, and that's okay. But you can shorten it up, but I would still leave 2 or 3 behind the decimal just in case you have one that's close, so you can still compare. So like in the calculator, you get -7.07106, and it goes on. So I'm just going to say 071, and then I can add zeros just so I can compare. -6.8, that stays, and -5.4 repeating, so 4, 4. So the one thing that's a little funky about integers with these negatives, the bigger the digit when they're negative, the smaller the number actually is. So basically the farthest from 0, then the smaller the actual number. So if we're putting these in least to greatest, my smallest number is going to be one of these 7s. So they both start with -7, but then my next number is 0, so that's also the same. So then I have to keep looking at the next ones. So since I have 7 in that one, that makes the negative square root of 50 my smallest number. So I got that. The next step would be -7. The next from there, -6.8, and then -5.4. And that's on your number line over here. So just remember, the bigger the digit when we're in the negatives is actually the smallest, or if you think about it being the farthest away from 0. And I've got some stuff down here. I don't need to have that. Okay. So fill in each circle with less than, greater than, or equal to make the statement true. 3 1/5 compared to 3.2. So in our calculator, you can do the alpha y equals and convert that to a decimal, and it should give you 3.2. 3.2, so they're equal. 8.1 repeating as opposed to the square root of 64, which is just 8, an even 8. So that would make 8.1 greater. Then negative square root of 16, so negative 4 compared to negative 4.1. So this one's a little different. Just like we talked about up there, if you're thinking about a number line, the farther away they are from 0, the smaller they are. So that would mean negative 4 by itself is actually bigger than negative 4.1. Order each set of numbers from least to greatest, smallest to big. Verify your answer by graphing. So we're just going to focus on putting them in order right now. Step 1, I want to turn them all into decimals. So the square root of 25 is 5, then 4.5, and then 4 3/5 is 4.6, and then 4.4 repeating. Okay, since these are all positive, I can just look at them and see which one should be the smallest. Or if you line them up vertically, a lot of times that'll help too. So you can look to see, I'm looking for the smallest, so it's not going to be 5, it's going to be one of these 3. But since they all start with 4, I've got to go next in line and look at the next digit. So 4.4 is my smallest, so 4.4 repeating. Then the next step would be 4.5. Then the next one, 4.6, so 4 3/5. And my biggest is the square root of 25. So like I said, if it helps you to put it vertically, please do that, if that's what helps. The next group, we've got negative 3, negative 0.6. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that 3 into a decimal just so I can better compare them. Then negative square root of 4 is actually negative 2. And then negative 2.1. So keep in mind those negative rules. Think about your number lines. The one that's farthest away from 0, or the biggest digit we can think about, is actually going to be my smallest. So in this case, negative 3 is my smallest. Then the next one up, I have 2 2s, so I can look at that, but so I need to look at the next number to see which one should come next. And it should be negative 2.1, then negative 2, and then 0.6 is my biggest. On number 6, Beyonce took 4 math quizzes. On her first quiz, Beyonce answered 21 out of 25 of the questions correctly. On the second, she answered 25 out of 27. On the third and fourth, she answered 88% and 92%. And we want to list Beyonce's quiz scores from least to greatest. So in your calculator, we want to turn them all into decimals. Again, same thing. I would just divide. So 21 divided by 25 is 0.84. 25 divided by 27 is 0.926, we'll say, 0.93. 88%. So remember, turning a percent into a decimal. Since it's a whole number, there's not already a decimal in this percent. I'm going to put an imaginary one at the end of the number and move it 2 spaces to the left. So that makes this decimal 0.88. Same thing with 92.92. So now when I put them all in order, I've got 0.84, 0.93, 0.88, and then 0.92. So one of my 8s should be my lowest. 0.84 is going to be the lowest, which was 21 over 25. The next will be that 88%, and then 92%. And then the biggest, the best score was the 25 out of 27. So after you convert them to decimals, a lot of times in the multiple choice, they'll be back in the order that they gave them to you in. So just make sure when you write them down, when you convert them, that it's right next to that number so you don't lose the number you were talking about. And On the back, same thing. We're putting these numbers in either ascending or descending order. So make all decimal numbers the same length. You can float option on the calculator like I've talked about. So these are already converted for you. Then you just have to check and compare which one is the largest and which one is the smallest. So the largest should be that 1.666. That's the only one that starts like that. Or the biggest one starts with the biggest number. And then we should have, we've got 0.85 and then 0.75, and that's all my positive numbers, okay? So I'm done with these. Now I'm on to the negatives. So I've got negative 1.4, negative 0.5, and negative 0.8. So we're going biggest to smallest. So remember, when you've got negatives, the smaller the digit, the bigger the number actually is. So we've got negative 0.5, and then negative 0.8, and then negative 1.4. Should be our layout, descending greatest to least. Then the last example, ascending least to greatest again. I've got 3.14. I'm going to rewrite these. 3.14, negative 0.75, negative 6.0, 1.625, and negative 0.3. And they're going in ascending order. So smallest, it's going to have to be one of these negatives. And looking at the biggest digit, I want the biggest digit since we're in the negatives. So negative 6 looks like my biggest one. So I got negative 6. Now my 2 zeros, so I need to compare the next number after the decimal. Should be negative 0.75. Then my last negative, which is negative 0.3. And then between 3.4 and 1.625, compare like you would any other number. 1.625 and then 3.14.